Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.
The Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union Policy Drafting Committee. I'd like to go over the agenda items for the night to get everybody's approval and whether we need to rearrange or add something along that line. The first thing is that we're doing both Zoom and in person. And the preference is now that we're trying to get everyone to start showing up in the presence so that we can accurately do these things. So I want to just put that out there. The first item tonight that I want to go is public comments and whether we have someone from the public to make. And then we have minutes from April 4th. And then we have policy 5510 equity policy, a proposal to discuss tonight. And we have 5520 transgender non-conforming student proposal to cover tonight. And then we have prevention of sexual harassment on. And then we have interrogation of search of students by law enforcement agency on for the night. And then we got the tracking sheet. And for future consideration out here in FYI, well, on the FYI, we have administrative regulations required to replace the current registration for policy 5004. And then we have future considerations is 5085 and 5087. I'm not ready for those right now. It's going to take some research and some other additional time that we may be soliciting additional input from committee members on these and in terms of an assignment. So barring all of that, there was one comment that I'll make in addition to the minutes concerning the question that we had asked. So if there are any changes from the committee and the group here that need to happen in terms of the agenda in which I read it. I'm seeing none and I'm hearing none. So one of the things that I was going to start trying to do before, I want to make sure that we all be respectful of everyone's opinion. And I'll try to make sure, because we're working live and online, is try to direct or repeat certain things to make sure we have it right, especially if we have an action item to be considered at a future meeting. So with that, the first item is public comments. Is there anyone from the public? We have one from is that Dylan?
Yes, it is.
Dylan from the public. So please, you say your name and your association as a parent or whatever along that line that
Great.
We needed to know you, so that if we need to get in contact with you, we'll need to know we have an email or a telephone number or something along that line.
Yeah, Laura can find me. So thank you guys. Let me just start off by saying this is with complete respect, and I thank you guys for your time and your service to everything you do, whether it's today or any other day. But so yes, I'm purely representing myself as a parent, and I honestly wanted to preface by saying I have no expectations of answers today, but I do hope to return to this committee and at some point possibly hear a response to some of the concerns that I am bringing to your attention. So with that said, you're more than welcome to interject if you have something to say, but I don't have expectations of having a complete solution immediately. So this is in regard to the Vermont Universal Pre-Kindergarten Education Law. I think you guys are pretty much familiar with the fact that this is ensuring that each and every child who is the age of 3, 4, or 5 years of age and are not enrolled in kindergarten have the opportunity to basically attend a pre-kindergarten education program, just to make sure we're all on the same page and you understand what law I'm talking about. I do believe we have about 16 sites within our district. And I will say, I do believe that this was created with wonderful intentions, but with all policy, I do believe there also might be room for revisions. This came to my attention because my youngest daughter will be turning 3 on September 8th. So she falls 7 days shy of this arbitrary date of August 31st. August 31st is the date you must be 5 to enter kindergarten. August 31st is also the date you must turn 3 for universal pre-K. I do believe that universal pre-K is trying to do wonderful things. We are trying to obviously advocate and allow resources for students who do not financially have the opportunity to pay for full-time pre-education. It is my understanding, though, that these two dates are not necessarily connected, meaning August 31st, you must be 5, August 31st, you must be 3. So my question lies, was this date issued by the state of Vermont? And then my next question is, and you're more than welcome to answer if you know that, or you can wait, but was it also formally adopted by SVSU policy? Meaning, I can never say that word, memorandum. There you go. So the memorandum that I have from the Agency of Education is dated for February of 2020. So what's come to my attention is that obviously a lot has changed since February of 2020. COVID has had a devastating impact, not only globally, but I must acknowledge that the babies and the toddlers of our community might possibly being overlooked. I want to make sure that we recognize that early education will permanently affect them. No library, no music classes, no play groups. The grocery store was really my child's only socialization while during lockdown and COVID. And I do not believe I am the only parent that's, young toddler had these similar experiences. Therefore, I do believe that we're obligated to re-examine some of these unforeseen circumstances for me as a parent, for teachers, and yes, for all of you as policy administrators. So I bring this to your attention because I believe that there's importance of equitable opportunity here, meaning wealth. So both aspects, the social disadvantage of the toddlers who had no social interactions because of a pandemic, which was an unforeseen circumstance, but it still has devastating long-term effects. So I'm trying to bring attention to how this public funding could actually be an initiative for parents who do not have the finances available if we were able to reevaluate this August 31st 3-year-old birthday date of entry. So, for example, if I were to send my child right now and pay full tuition, I'm looking at about $500 a month versus, because of the 7 days, if she had that subsidy, it would be only about $130 a month. So my family is lucky enough right now to be able to afford that. And I take the importance of early education and say this is valuable. But how many families in Vermont live there that don't have that opportunity to possibly spend that extra $400 and something a month because of that gap of their age not being allowed to enter in? So I wanted to bring to your attention that Massachusetts actually has the age of 2.9, meaning 2 years and 9 months. And I do believe that I asked to have us concentrate on the fact that these young toddlers really need to have something bridge this gap, especially for the disenfranchised toddlers and families of low-income families that don't have the money allocated. So the 2.9, meaning 2 years and 9 months versus being 3 by August 31st. I do believe that we must help for the long-term success. And I would love to hear your thoughts and how we can approach this. And hopefully we can agree that early intervention is proven to work. And this also includes non-disabled learners. But if we don't recognize the long-term social effects that COVID has had, I just think that we're actually missing an opportunity for like some steps that we can take right now. So basically, those are my questions. That's kind of my comments to just bring to attention. If you do happen to know whether or not August 31st is mandated by the state, or if it is actually a policy that SVSU has decided. And if you have any questions in regards to what I said, I know I said a lot, but I hope that you can hear it's from a good place. And it's really thinking about these toddlers that really could use that extra 3 months of possible inclusion. And that's it.
All right, I'd like to thank you for your comments. Public comments are public comments, and we will not be discussing them.
Okay.
What we'll do is have the opportunity to review our policy, our procedures, and specifically, this is the policy committee, but I don't know what district you are seeking to go through. But if, you know, it may be that you needed to go to that board as well, because that's the first board that needs to be on if it needs to be something. But anyway, we have your concerns, and we'll be more than happy to review the policy and understand your complaints so that we can explain it and plan for it in the next policy meeting.
Great.
As soon as possible. Okay. There anyone else with a comment, a public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the minutes of April 4th, 22 Policy Committee meeting. That's in your packet. I wanted to say one thing to add on to the minutes. We had a question was raised, and that concerning the this committee, a requirement for having policies worn and accepted by the new members, Arlington and Sandgate, and what that meant, and whether all of them needed, all of the policies on this board needed to go through their districts, and that they needed to sign off on them. So we have gotten back some information from our legal services concerning that, and that information was forwarded on to the administrators and myself, so that we'll better understand what it is that we were asking to happen in terms of that policy. So the comments, I guess, with the legal comments was to be considered that it is the bottom line is that this district and the SVSU is basically responsible for looking out with its members district as to what policies that we have need to prevent the district from being subject to scrutiny of lawsuits and vice versa. So over the time, various policies were manufactured, whether they were done by the state or not. They were done to protect the individuals in terms of the administrators, the students, the parents, the students, and the district from lawsuit. So it is our position, basically saying that we prefer and strongly recommend, whether you actually have a policy that we produce here as being required by the state or not, that you consider accepting it, because if something happened and you still, the first thing will be that that person, that that individual or that event that occurred is going to be looking for a policy or some procedures that should be in place to manage the situation that they're going to come up to. And it may not happen, but that is what I wanted to clear that up and have that put down for our record. With that, I have a motion to accept the minutes from April 4th.
So moved.
It's been moved by Jackie. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Nicole. Nicole, second. Okay. Any other discussion concerning the minutes? If not, all in favor, this aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone abstaining? And anyone voting no? Okay. Thank you. The next item on our policy for discussion tonight is we gave it a number, policy 5510, and it's equity policy. And Jonathan is here to speak on behalf of this policy, which was coded by the Vermont School Board Association as C29, and it was a recommended policy. And so we're trying to act as fast as we can with that policy. So at this time, I'd like to hear comments from Jonathan first, since he was going through a lot of this in terms of edification and so forth. And then we'll weigh in on the things that we may have some concerns with.
Okay, so this policy, as previously mentioned, has been recommended by the Vermont School Board Association. To put it into layman's and simplistic terms, this policy is essentially a codification of a district's commitment towards equity and equity-related practices. Chief among them is the collection of data and reviewing of data in relation to equity-related outcomes for students, be them academically, behavioral, and able to use that data to make better informed decisions. That is the first and foremost part of this policy that I think is that it brings to the table. Currently, by having this, if we were to have this policy, we would codify our usage for this data. The other thing that this policy does do, it does codify our commitment towards making sure we have equitable outcomes for all of our students, regardless of race, religion, creed, color, or disability or impairment. So that's basically this policy in a nutshell. I think it's actually, it is required, but in my opinion, it's probably going to be moved into more of a needed realms in the years to come, primarily because of various, I guess you could say, social pushes throughout the whole entire wider spectrum. So that's all I have for this one. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, I'll list, Jackie, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yes. So if you go on to definitions, the first definition, equity means that a student's success is not predicted nor predetermined by characteristics such as race, ethnicity, religion, family economics, class, geography, ability, language, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or initial proficiencies. Then if you go down to implementation, it does not mirror the same words that were in the previous in the definition, because here it skips over some words. So I believe you need to probably have them mirror each other, or take out some words from the definition. I don't know where you got the definitions from, but did you make these up, or did you get these from the Vermont School Association?
You had and should have had in your packet the actual, when I read the citation code of C29, I believe. Yes, that should have been the length, and that is the exact language coming from the Vermont School Board to us. But we know we're going to massage this and rework some things here, Jackie. So that's the start. I hear you and I see that. But the first thing I want to make sure, and then we'll come back to that, is the format or the flow of the policy information. And so if I may speak to that, normally we try not to have definitions as the first part of a particular policy. What we want to have is what it is that we want to achieve in this policy to be first, and then definitions to follow. If we can agree on format, and what I mean by that, there are the implementation part and culturally responsive practices. The two of those should be mirrored together in some form or fashion to speak to what the district will do. And if we had that in that format, and then we had definitions to follow, I think we may be.
I do have that. You want me to put it up?
Oh yeah, Lisa has it that way, so we can.
Oh.
It's coming.
There we go. No, almost. There it is.
Okay. What's on the screen now, we slide down to line item number 14. And 14 speaks to culturally responsive practices, and it lists all of those things and support and empower all students and so forth along that line to experience and to ensure learning. And then right below that, we had implementation. And I was wanting to consider that, could we tie implementation in together, or do we need to say the implementation here, or have that first line have implementation and culturally responsible practices somehow come together with a line that we will, to complete our commitment to equity, the district will, and then all the things follow. So any comments on how we'll like to put down what implementation and cultural responsive practices together? Do we need a topic there? We just needed to go into, we believe, methods and practices that support and empower all students socially, emotionally, intellectually, and civically by leveraging students' lives experience to experience learning, Therefore, to complete our commitment to equity, the district will follow those bullet points. And doing that, then we can define what it is that we need to do for each one of those things along that line. So will that hurt this policy as not have that subject there saying culturally responsive practices and implementation? Or do we want to say something else before we go into that?
What would be the reason for changing it? What's the rationale?
The rationale behind it is that the policy is trying to divide what it is that we're going to do in terms of implement. We're going to do that anyway, if we wanted to do that. And then it tries to spell out our obligations culturally and practices as to what they are. So do we need to have a title for that? Is what I'm saying.
Unless there's some substantive change, like we have some fundamental disagreement with what the VSBA has outlined, they have a pretty rigorous policy drafting process. So if there's something that we distinctly differ from within the SVSU, I can see reasons for changing it. But if it's, I guess I don't understand the reason for change to a policy that's been drafted by the VSBA unless the SVSU has something significantly different in our practices or
The flow,
philosophy.
the clarity and the flow of information, and we don't have to define what it is that we're talking about doing, and that's what I'm saying. We don't have to put that in there, and we don't normally take everything from the Department of Education in terms of the policy committee. I'm just saying we want it to flow so our people in this district and any other district can get this information and not be confused about it, or be confused with it. And so I'm looking at it that it may be a little confusing to me to say culturally responsive practices. Okay. And then we're going to implement it. We're going to do that by the first statement, which is 20 under that. And so why do I need a title in the very beginning of 14 and a title 18 when I can do all of that and then go right into those?
But the culturally responsive practices is under definition. So it's giving you a definition of what equity means, and then it's giving you a definition of what we're talking about when we say culturally responsive practices. And then it goes into the practices, which is the implementation process. So the line 14, I think that you're referring to, is part of the definition section.
And the definition is going to be moved down second. We don't put definitions first in our policy pieces. We try not to. And so the definitions are going to be moved down below those two statements. So it will be stating right where Lisa had it, just there, culturally responsive practices, if we want to keep it that way. And then if we want to put implementation behind that, and then if you scroll on down further behind that, the definitions will become not line 5 up there. Is that the end? Or that's on the next page?
Mhm.
The definitions will be on the next page. So we just rearrange things, that's all. So that now that we talked about what it is that we're going to do and how we're going to do something, and now we're going to define these things for clarity by our definition over here. We didn't change anything yet until we're going to get to Jackie and the other things about adding and making sure something is exactly correct.
Well, I agree with the, who was it that was speaking? I'm sorry.
That's Nicole.
Nicole, I agree with Nicole. I don't think, if you read it from the top, if you read policy up to line, what is it, 13, right?
Right.
What you're saying on 14, 15, and 16 is the same thing as the policy.
If I may.
Well, Jonathan, he has a comment for, go ahead.
So like 14, 15, and 16 is a definition as to what the school district means as per se culturally responsive practices. So like if we were to go with the implementation part first and foremost, 14, 15, and 16 would be scratch that out from there, and then it would be added towards the tail end under the definitions under equity part.
Hold on one second.
I believe. So just be you, yeah. Well, I gotta get.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
She's going to insert it there.
Yeah.
There we go.
That makes sense.
Okay, so that's behind the definitions.
Leon, I just pulled up a policy as an example. 5500 is an SVSU policy. The
Right,
policy statement is first. Under the policy statement is a definition section.
right, and we're
So-
gonna get to that.
I'm just
those in
saying,
tangent.
you have a precedent for including definitions first. It feels to me like we're changing it for the sake of changing it without making any substantive changes. I'm not in support of changing it for the sake of changing it unless you've got some concrete substance as a rationale for changing it. I don't understand why we're changing it.
Okay, but anyway, we can have everybody discuss. One says, don't change it, they prefer to keep them that way. We've tried, and yes, we realize that there may be one or two policies out there that had that, but we try to make sure we have a constant flow for all of our policies. And so, yes, there's one or two out there, and we'll get to them when we review them to move them in the same format. So that was the purpose of just making sure that this policy, all of our policies have a flow and a format that's similar to it, so that when people go, they can see the same thing in the same formats. So if the committee, in which you have Jackie and who else do you have, and just the three of us here, feel that you want to just leave it like it is.
I would leave it because it matches the next one.
The next section,
No, the transgender and non-conforming students, it's the same thing. You have policy, definition.
right, I understood that, and that's why
Right,
this is
but
that.
what
So-
you don't have in this is you don't have that extra paragraph, and I think it's an extra paragraph above and beyond. You have this policy definition and then an introduction to your implementation, which says the same thing as lines 4 through 13.
4 through 13, equity means. On the definitions. Yeah,
So it's line 28, 29, and 30 on my pages. I don't know what it's on yours.
well,
But
the one
it's
that's
the paragraph that starts with culturally responsive practices. And you don't have that on the other, have that on the other policies. You don't have an introduction to the implementation.
and so you're thinking we don't need that period, 15 through 17?
Let me see. Yeah,
Well, let's have
15.
the screen.
Yes, I think it's redundant.
You want to know it? I mean, Nicole, you have any questions or comment about the repeatability of that?
Of what?
Culturally, the definitions that Jackie just talked about, that's already stated in another area of the policy.
Lines 15 through 17, and if you scroll up, is the same. It's a condensed version of scroll up, all the way up, yeah, of 4 through 13.
Four through 13.
The policy intro. Paragraph.
So.
Can Jonathan?
Yes, go ahead,
Right.
John.
So I think the confusion is like, you may have like the verbiage used prior, but like you also have terminology used, like the cultural responsive practices and the definitions part are to explicitly define what we mean by some verbiage prior to. So if we say it, like, let's say we were to say it in line, I'm just hazarding a guess, 8, somebody who might be reading this may not understand what is meant by culturally responsive practices. So that's the definitions part that block right there is there to make sure that we are all speaking on the same language and communicating in the same, I guess you could say, book. That's what that's there for.
Well, then if that's the case, then it should be in the lines 4 through 13. It should be incorporated in lines 4 through 13 rather than standing out by itself in
It's
another
more-
place.
It might be more like it might be more helpful to look at it as kind of like a footnote. Because like, when you read it,
That's another way of handling it. I mean, that's another way of doing it. It could be in a footnote and it won't have to be in the text of the policy. Again, there'll be a note down to define culturally responsible practice as a note. You think?
Or a definition.
What's that, Jackie?
I said, or a definition.
Or definition, well, it could be one of the definitions and nothing. It's true, so what preference do you have, definition or a note?
I have a preference for definition rather than a separate paragraph.
I believe in like,
Which is where it is right now.
yeah, that's where it is right now. It's under the definitions, equity, then it has the culturally responsive practices defined.
Right, but it's not bulleted.
Right, oh, so we can bulleted it in all small language, is what you're saying?
The bullets
Yeah.
apply to equity.
Yeah,
The other is a
All the
separate
bulletins
one.
applies to equity word. Is what,
yes. Lisa's 100% correct. Like those bullet points are all part of the equity definition. It's under different parts that encompass equity. The culturally responsive practices is a whole nother definition that's there to basically inform the wider public and our administrators and our students and our staff. That is what we mean by when we say culturally responsive practices.
Okay, so then it's another definition, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
it is an entirely new definition.
And it comes up in the implementation, which is why it's spelled out under culturally responsive. Culturally responsive practices comes up under implementation in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th bullet.
Yes, yes.
so it should be bullet pointed under that then, as opposed so that it'll be similar?
I don't think the
I don't think we need to change anything.
Yeah, I would say, this is me speaking as the person that's going to have to be in charge of implementing it. I'll be 100% honest. Not changing it would be the best, because it would actually, it then makes it conducive and equal to other districts that have adopted the exact same policy. So if there's a question or comment, I can basically just refer to my equity coordinators. We do meet every first Wednesday of the month, and we basically hammer out details. So if like we change it, and I have to go back and basically go draw them through our verbiage and nomenclature, that would actually make it 10 times more difficult. But if we would have just adopted as is, then everybody would be like, oh yeah, line number 16. Boom, we're all on the same page. That's just my personal preference though.
I agree with you. I don't see any reason to change it.
My question now is implementation under, after or following line 13?
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay,
But unless we go back to what the
Yeah,
first model policy format is.
is this a problem here now? Or you want it just as it came off of that other policy, you think people are gonna be, well, again, I know what we're saying, that we don't want to change it. I'm just saying the rationale behind what it needed to be in terms of consistency
Yeah.
within the SVSU, not other districts throughout the state and everywhere else, because if I look at a whole bunch of them, they're all over the place.
Mhm.
And so, I'm willing to go along with what individuals are thinking here. I'm from the old school. So if that's the case, and you're saying we don't want to change the verbiage or the wording at all, that we can just go ahead and try sending it through just like it is.
well, I have another question.
Okay, Jackie.
Under definitions, and I don't know what line it is on your pages, but it's the last one where it says equity involves acknowledging and destructing inequitable practices, acknowledging biases, employing practices that reflect the reality that all students will learn, and create inclusive, multicultural school environments. And then you have, and these are the words I'm questioning, for adults and children. Throughout everything that we've used, we've never used the word children, we've used students.
Is that gonna be a hardship for the other people in the other districts?
No.
If that's not gonna be a hardship, I don't have any problem with having adults and students.
Oh, okay.
Does anybody else have any problems with that? I didn't see that anywhere else, I don't think, in here.
My question is, are we gonna stay with this format or go with,
We're saying that this format that Johnson has been discussing it with other districts in terms of outside of this SVSU, the format. And he was wanting to make sure that everybody in all the other districts, when it came to equity, be looking at the same type of format.
then I need to go back
Back,
to
yeah,
the previous document before I start making changes.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And as it goes out to the other districts, we'll see what kind of comments that they have in terms of clarity and questions in terms of administrators, because that's why we warn them.
Yeah.
And then try to get information, and then we come back and adopt. And then we can still make changes. So whatever we do here today they're never going to be written in stone, absolutely stone. These are working documents to put out in the district to make sure, to serve as our belief and guidelines for the educational body of the administrators and the parents to look at how we are doing things equitably for everybody in all of the SVSU. Okay, so we're back now. And so the wording that we were going to change in here
Change it.
was for adults and children for adults and students.
Good.
Check.
Anything else? If I'm hearing nothing, if not, then I'll like to have this policy move on to the next SVSU policy for warning. All in favor of that?
I'm in favor of moving on.
Okay.
I am.
All right, well, let's move on. The next policy on here, it will be 5520, transgender, non-conforming students proposal, and that was again a reference from the Department of Education as a recommended policy to put in place. And it's C28, it's what it is, and Jonathan is here to talk about this policy as well.
So transgender and gender non-conforming students policy 5520. Again, this is, as previously mentioned, is recommended by the Vermont School Board Association. This policy actually is in pretty much lockstep to the current Vermont Agency of Education continuing best practices for schools regarding transgender and non-conforming students. That's a document that we all use into making sure that outcomes for students that fall under these categories are protected and are able to have an inclusive educational experience. This policy is important primarily because the increasing numbers of things this policy would cover, whether regarding record keeping, name identifications and issues, or just accessibility issues. This policy outlines what we should do as a school district to ensure that we are not only keeping in line with the best practices as described per the Agency of Education, but also protecting the students from having any sort of negative outcome, whether it be within the school system or at home. There are multiple examples I could cite that I've had intimate knowledge this year on having to address issues that are actually found within this policy, the issues that are brought up and rectified by this policy, excuse me. But I will say that this policy for the most part would do a good job of alleviating a lot of those issues and making our schools more equitable and inclusive for those who are transgender or gender nonconforming. Outside of that, it basically goes into what we're supposed to be doing with student privacy. It outlines something called a gender support plan, and also outlines student record, how school systems are supposed to utilize student records. And it places it in writing so that not only students, but families, teachers, staff, everybody in between knows what the expectations are, how we're supposed to conduct ourselves, at the same time, how to properly handle these sort of situations. If there are any questions, I am here to answer them.
Jonathan, I think it's helpful to hear from you, and thank you for this, that the language in here.
Who is this?
This is Nicole.
Okay, you have a comment?
I just wanted to thank Jonathan for referencing the fact that this language in this policy would have assisted in some specific situations in the school, that it does provide guidance that would have helped in student-specific issues that have surfaced.
Okay, so, but it's nothing you want to change in terms of comments of the policy format.
Well, the heading needs to be changed because there's a typo, but other than that.
That's what I'm looking, I'm looking for first is the information that we needed to change in terms of the policy, its contents first, and then we'll thank everybody later. So, where is it in the header that you have something?
Lisa just fixed it.
I had an F in there that didn't need to be.
Okay, and that down at the bottom, I'm going to go to the last bulletin in terms of sexual orientation bulletin. And I was trying to make a note. I looked up a whole bunch of things along this line and said the piece that defined that area had a better definition, and I don't know, when they made this policy, they left some things off, and here's what they left off. The bulletin, the last bulletin, they put in and used sexual orientation is not to be the same as gender identity, and not all transgender students identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, and not all gay, lesbian, bisexual students display gender non-conforming characteristics. And so that language was changed from this, such as behavior, clothes, hairstyle, activities, voice, mannerism, and body characteristics. That's what that was changed from, and it was made to be in terms of what I just read under that section. So I don't know whether you knew the rationale behind that, because here's why I'm saying when they left this off, this part that was changed better define to the everyday person what it is that is different between the two, the sexual orientation and gender identity and so forth, are transgender. And it gave the examples of their behavior could be different or may not. The clothes may be different. The hairstyles may be different. The activities may be different. The voice and the mannerism and the body of characteristics. And so that's what that statement is, that sentence is saying. But if you want to leave it like it is, I think that some people may not get all of those items that I just mentioned there.
Where would you add that, Leon?
I had made a comment at the end in parenthesis and gave the such as behavior. I mean, and just put it there so that somebody would know that these were a different definitions behind that as to what they were actually clarifying as what may be different.
But gender expression is a bullet up above in definitions that
That's why they changed it. Because I was about, so they
Go ahead, John. Go.
They moved that part that you were discussing up into the one more line up.
Oh,
If you don't mind, into that part. Because that way, like, I think the confusion was prior, and I don't know because I didn't get a hold of the VSBA person to explain this, but I did know they were making an adaptation earlier this year.
Oh, yeah, it's all right there.
They tried to streamline it. Like, there's the part that you were discussing, that you were talking about. They wanted to clearly outline gender expression versus other aspects.
Right. But they didn't give these specific characteristics that people can identify at the school level. I'm trying to say it's more legally as opposed to where a parent or the teacher or somebody else or the student can identify. So you read those up there and you don't, it leaves the desire to understand what it is, as opposed to these things specifically spelling out behavior, clothes, hairstyle, activities. That's what I'm saying. And so, we discuss it. If we think we want to just leave, oh, there it is up on 24.
Right there. Yeah, there it is.
Oh, I missed it on 24.
No, they just moved it from one area to the other part.
Okay, so they moved it.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. Okay. It's up there. So don't just skip that. We'll skip that. Okay. Is there anything else that anyone wants to discuss in terms of the privacy piece or part of that with these things?
Leon, do
Yes.
we want to keep all the footnotes or move stuff that's in the footnotes to legal reference, those items that are actual legal references?
What we've done, and again, is tried to put all of the footnotes at the end so that we would be able to see those things, and it would be easy for someone to look at the group of them and make changes, and then follow them up and edit, as opposed to saying, where's number 1 and where's number 2 in here and what it means and so forth. But if we go to 1, 2, 3, and 4, all at the end of the document, we were able to do that as opposed to having them in between. So if that's something we've been trying to do in all the places, are there any problems with that?
I think best practice is to have the footnotes on the page where the footnote is referenced, but it doesn't.
And Jackie, that's I heard Nicole said it's best practice to put them that way. I rely on you to go and look up all those notes for me. And another board member will be looking up all of those notes and so forth. So,
Again, I was just gonna, I'm looking at the references and I'm looking where they are. And I do think in this case, like it's super helpful to be able to read and hit number 4, 5, and 7 in particular. Like if I were sitting in a principal role, I'd have them right there, and that could be helpful because they're super meaty. So I'm wondering, Jonathan, how do you?
I would, like, my thought process is, and I'm just thinking as Nora is, as an administrator, if I'm reading through something, I want it to be on one page, especially if it's like, if I'm dealing with a delicate situation in which time is of the essence and I need an immediate reference point. By being able to just like, look, okay, footnote number 5, what do they mean by footnote number 5? Okay, that's purpose thing. That means then I could make that jump real quick. Moving it to the end, you could still do that, but like as in my personal preference is like when I went to school or whatever, is read, okay, something I'm confused about, look at the bottom. Okay, less confused, I at least know where to go.
So, okay, so Jackie was saying, okay, all of them to have the references at least on the same page.
Yeah.
We can do that, which it says that's what they are, because if they're reference 1, 2, 3 on that page, we need to have those citations for that before we end that page. And then when we go to the next page, over 4, 5, 6, and 7 is on that page. And I didn't see, where's 9? There is a number 9. And so that means it had to be an 8 somewhere. There's 8. 8 and 9. Where's 8 and 9?
Here's 9.
One question I have is what's the story with 10?
This is 8.
And there's a 10. I missed those.
Yep.
So we
10's
had
right
8,
there.
8, 9, and 10. And their legal reference to those. 8, 9, and 10 at the bottom. They're really small. Okay. So we'll follow suit along that line. Is there any, unless somebody else has some other questions or comments concerning that, this policy will be put into the SVSU format with a warning date to go to SVSU at the next meeting.
Just a quick question in case I missed it. Are the definitions going to precede the references? In other words, it's the policy, definitions, and then references.
We said we wanted to leave them like that. Yes.
Okay.
Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
my problem with that is when people read this and they, some people will stop at the definitions because you have the references below it. And normal APA language, it refers to having all definitions together. So when you split it up like that, people think you're finished.
Well,
She's talking about definitions or footnotes?
Are you talking about the
The
definitions or
footnotes, you mean?
footnotes?
are the definitions that are on page of the items that are on the page. Student records is on.
Yes, well, didn't we just go over a policy where we put the definitions at the end?
Well, we didn't. We left them
We
back.
left them,
We left them in. We didn't put them at the end. We left them right in the middle of the policy. The very,
Okay,
and so I said, we'll give that a shot. And hopefully we won't have too much of a conversation between the other districts when they see it and ask those same questions.
okay, and so are you putting all the footnotes together on this page?
Oh, no, we're keeping the footnotes on the same as they are at the bottom of each page.
The idea is that if an administrator were to be reading this and they need a quick reference, like they're on a phone call, as they're reading it through the phone call, footnotes right there, like they could cite the actual legal reference for that, what they mean on the phone call, as opposed to having to fumble through, possibly oversee it. It's the adage of KISS, keep it simple.
So.
Well, the adage of KISS might work for most things, but for this, it might not. The reason I'm saying that is because when the footnotes are all together, people can look at them all together and flip them over. But when you do it like this, it's a page. Are you sure it's going to be a page?
We can do it any way we prefer. That was the question that we started out with, is whether we wanted all these particular footnotes at the end of the policy.
Yes, well,
And so I don't have a I mean, that's what we were trying to do, things along this line. But if you think it needs to stay there, and that's why we're having this conversation, so that we can agree to do it one way or another. And again, if it goes out and people have concern or issues with how it is, we'll get those comments back from the other districts, what it is, other administrators or whatever, what it is that they have with issues with it. And that's the purpose of the warning.
Well, I understood. I mean, I heard what Jonathan said, that, you know, he wanted it at the end of the page, but we have no assurance that, you know, after number 33, that's the end of the page.
Yes.
We kind of do, because of the way that it's formatted in the actual online system, they make sure that it cuts off, that the footnotes stay with the page that it's formatted with. So like when you go to the SVSU website and you download a policy, it basically keeps what you see right here is what you would actually get when you download the policy.
One page with those on it. They won't be missing because it's formatted to be on one page.
Okay. Has anybody looked at the style of the other pages that we have for policies?
Yes, and I'm saying that we have them, and we've tried to put them in and be consistent with them, and there are some outliers out there. But then if these are going to be real issues, I'm saying we can live with that. And I think that's what I was trying to explain to Nicole. What we were trying to do is make sure the things that SVSU did followed the same format so that all the districts will know exactly how things are and flow in that same pattern. But there will be some exceptions, and this is an exception, and there's another exception out there somewhere else for this very reason. And so what we'll do is allow those individuals to come forward and state the case as to why it can't be the way it is now, later on, if they had a real strong preference and why it's an issue for them. Okay? So, to get this clear, are we willing to go and, Jackie, I mean, you was asking a question, to keep it so that it'll be, everything will be on one page? Or do you strongly believe?
Well, I personally, my preference is to have them all together.
Nicole, I haven't heard from you.
Oh, you've heard from me.
Oh. But it's getting so long, I forgot it.
I think they should remain on the page where they're referenced. I think.
Because someone might not go look for it if it's not there.
Okay, so we'll, for the start and for the sake of moving this along here, Jackie, I hope we can put it out and hear comments from other administrators and board members as to their concern. And if we need be, we'll change it. So can you live with that?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So this policy will be put in the SVSU format and go forward for a warning at SVSU. Thank you. The next policy we had on here is 5003. I'm trying to find my notes as to what I said about 5003.
Comprehensive.
So this is the one that just went out. It's been to all the boards. So this is the one, right? We just need.
This has just been out to all of the boards, and there's no comments. And so it's back here, and we haven't gotten any concerns or any comments from any of the other districts.
Nope.
So we're ready to move on to SVSU for the adoption process. Okay, yep, that's what I was trying to find. Okay, And then policy, interrogation and search and seize of students by law enforcement is a similar policy. It has gone through all of the districts that had it before them and had an opportunity to act on it. I have to change that wording to say that they had an opportunity to act on it, because we know that Sengate is saying that they are going to meet once a quarter, and some other things I hear along that line. But for all of those that had a chance to review it, have not come back with any reason why it can't move forward and continue to go. Did I miss anything? Okay. Thank you. The next thing we have down on here is that tracking sheet. And again, for everybody, the tracking sheet was to help us try to follow all of the policies and state where they are and when the different districts warned them for our records, to make sure that we know and keep track of all these things in a organized fashion. So if you look at this tracking sheet, you can see as it goes from SVSU across all the way to Sandgate, it'll show the dates won or dates adopted for those particular policies for our records. Okay, anybody have any questions or comments concerning this document? Hearing none, and I don't see any hands or anything raised there for that. This help us track things.
Leon, this is Nicole. This isn't really about the tracking document, but I think we had talked at the last meeting about, when I look at the VSBA site and policies that they have either as new policies, recently changed policies, policies that they have expired or removed, is that content used to develop what comes next on the SVSU's list for reviewing? Like, are you looking at what they have under new policies and factoring that into what the SVSU will be looking at next?
I thought I had explained that. I mean, before you even asked that question last time, here's what I said, what we've done and what we do. And the answer to that is, yes, I look at that. Is that the only thing that I look at? No. We solicit information from the parent group, the public, our administrators, students, and we take those all together and try to come up with a working list of things, and whether something has merit and has value still, even though the the school board says that they removed this policy. We may find that this policy has information that we need to protect the individuals in this district or SVSU, and therefore it will not be removed. And so there are things that we develop because our administrators have come forward and says, if you spell it out a certain way, and if you put this thing out here, a policy, a procedure like this, it will be clear and it will keep me out of trouble, protect me as an administrator if you did this. And so we set a policy in place with procedures to do that. So the answer to your question, yes and no. And as we take the sources from a lot of different places and we come together, and I try to sit down with, I ask everybody to send me information. I'll send information to Lisa or Laura that what is being concerned, have a concern about a particular policy or particular issue. And then we sit down and plan on putting it on a particular agenda if we think it need to be on the agenda, or may require a response, just like the individual that came on here tonight. We want to make sure we follow through, review that policy. Again, I don't know what the date is because it came under public comment. And so we'll go back out and look at that and decide whether the information, and we have time for our administrators to work and act and go out and dig into something before we put it back on the agenda, or put it on the agenda.
I have a question, Leon.
Okay, Jack. Well, I want to make sure that was clear with Nicole first, if you don't mind. Is that
Here's mud.
okay? Thanks, Jackie.
Oh, so by getting back to that person who asked the question, so that she's included in the next meeting, which probably won't be until September. Am I correct?
That we're going to go out, and what I'm saying is I'm going to go and look at that policy again. I don't want to comment on it now without reading it, but every 3 or 4 years it comes up.
Right.
So we'll do that, and then and I'll discuss the issue with our administrators along that line, and whether it's policy or whether it's procedure, and whether it needs to be on the agenda, or whether there is just a notification back concerning the disposition as to what we're going to take.
Yes, and it's just because there's a lot of time intervening between today and the next meeting, because I presume the next meeting is not in August, it's probably in September. Am I correct?
We have it September the 12th. Right.
So that's a long time to wait for an answer to that question, particularly if the child could be enrolled. So I guess my question to you is, could the answer be given to her in a very, very timely manner?
Well, the way we define the responses to public comments, and it does say it will be not very, but it says that we will reply back in a timely manner in that policy. Okay. And so I'm going to do that, but there's a process that we're going to go through to make sure we follow the same one to get things done. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on here is for your information that was on the C10. Administrative regulations are required to replace the current administrative regulations for policy 5004, and they've gone through it. That's just information for us. Okay. And then I mentioned earlier in the process before we started that we had future consideration. And again, these policies that are on here, I'm down now at item number 9 because no one had any comments for that. And it was administrative regs anyway. So they'll just go out along that line unless someone found issues with those in line against our policy, and I didn't see any. So the other thing is policies for future consideration. I have down, these are some big ones again for us, and they involve a lot of legal things, and they involve information and so forth, in cooperation with the building administrators. And so we needed to have time to be able to go through those policies and have them look at some of them and what issues of concern we may have, so that when we start to discuss, I would have all the grounds covered here. I didn't want to forget them, so they're down for future consideration. And so then that's what I have down. will be having that policy for preschool down for future consideration for us to look at. But I don't know whether it would be in September, it could be in December or whatever, but I won't lose it. And I didn't look it up to get the number to
There
put
is no
on.
policy on pre-K.
There's a policy.
No, there's administrative regulations. There's no policy on pre-K.
The administrative regulations should follow a policy that governs when a student can be entered into the public school. And I didn't go and look that up.
There is a state policy.
And so then to get in it, I'm saying what I need to do is do some research. And so I can, if someone wants to take the effort in terms of either Jackie or Nicole.
I sent it to you already.
To go out and do that. We're not going to do it right here, but I'm saying for our next meeting, I can have it down, and because I want us to actually massage these things and look at them as opposed to just saying them right now.
Right.
Okay.
So I did send.
I appreciate you sending whatever you have, because that's what we want, is the different board members, committee members, to go out and get things and then bring them back so that we can do it. You just quick, Jackie. You are really good. So I won't take the time now to try to read it and go through it.
No, because we really have to go through the administrators and see if there's no policy, we have to create one, and.
Well, Nicole is saying that, but I won't comment no more than it should be something in place that address that in terms of a policy. And I have to find out where it is, and I can ask her to, Nicole, to search all of our policies out there, because it was something documented, I thought, in terms of a policy that, you know what? It may be in the individual district policy group. It's not.
I think
50-20.
Yeah, 50-20.
It's 50-20. So we'll go and I'm just as a reference, we'll start with 50-20. Okay? And have it down. Just wanted to clarify that and say this is how we get and create an agenda. And so now if there's individual policies, I won't take a blanket thing. The Vermont School Board says that we should do and try to review all of our policies within 5 years. Okay? And so if we took the number of policies we have and divide them by 5, and then take the number of meetings we have, I think we better schedule 3 meetings a month. Okay?
It's an understatement.
I'm just telling you, and by the time we get that through all of the districts, and that's what one of the reasons we got a tracking sheet is because these things were getting lost from district to district. And so we're going to do as much as we can, as fast as we can, regardless of what somebody recommended in terms of how many we should turn over a year or do in 5 years, because we don't have the manpower, we don't have the resources and the time set aside to try to do all of those, as someone has recommended that we try to do. So I'll be looking for information to say, let's add to this list. If not, I'll go out and try to look at some of the ones that we have missed and try to develop a list for our next meeting and get those out. And so I'm asking board members, please look at our list of policies. Send me a couple that you would like to have on our next meeting. And then we'll put them all together. So if we had a couple from 8 or 9 board members here, that everybody's not here tonight, but if we just say 5, send 2, that's 10 policies that we would be able to consider for our next meeting if they're not duplicates.
I know what that is, but we don't.
Okay?
That's the state.
It's 6 o'clock, 8 minutes to 7 minutes to 6. I don't have anything else to discuss tonight unless in someone else, and we didn't, add it, but it says our next policy meeting is September 12th, 2022. Okay, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
That's, Nicole. How about a
Yep.
second, Jackie? Jackie is out searching. I'll second that, which the chair would do just that. So all in favor of this meeting ending right now at 6:54. This for aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much and have a nice summer.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.